Okay, we are live recording.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the quarterly meeting of the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council. It's 10:04 a.m. on August 15th, 2023. And I will call this meeting to order. I'm thinking about roll call. Excuse, yes.
Let me call the roll and then we can do excusals.
Okay.
All right, Chair Canseco. Chair Blimwitz.
Present.
Dr. Cartwright.
Present.
Chair Hallbauer.
Present.
Chair Brumley, he is out. Ms. Rogers is not present currently, but she should be here around 10:40, I believe. Dr. Scoma.
Present.
Ms. Smith is out. And then Dr. Taylor.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we've got a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to say that we had a breeze outside in Austin at 10 in the morning. So things are looking up. Let's start with our first. We need to excuse two members, Chair Brumley and Chair Smith. Both called in with valid excuses, and I'm not sure how that's run. I don't know if we've done that before.
Just move to excuse.
Move to excuse.
Okay. So move second. So I can't see a hand raised, so you're gonna have to tell me.
Second.
There we go. Second, Dr. Cartwright. All in favor indicate by raising your hand. Any opposed, same sign. Hi, Patrick. Okay, good.
All right.
Passes. Informational items. Darryl, will you take us through section 3?
Sure. Okay, most of the information that we're going to go over is just kind of FYI. It's all been included in your packets, so you've had a chance to read it. The first item up is going to be the quarterly performance measures and the calculations. As you can see from our performance measures, we continue to improve. Application processing time continues to go down. Average complaint processing time is going down. Number of licenses issued and all of that, all of our metrics continue to improve. There's a few that the metrics are going to change effective September 1st. One is the total number of licenses renewed. Currently, that's like at 44,000 when you look in the PDF. And of course, there's no way we can hit that. We actually renew around 29,000, 30,000 every year. So we've adjusted that there. And then the number of pending complaints that we have, currently that's set at 1,200. We only have 300 and something total pending complaints across the entire agency. So we'll adjust that on September 1st as well. Those numbers were reflective of the numbers that we had, based off of information from HHSC and the backlogs that we had inherited. So that's going to all change on September 1st. Next item up is going to be 3B, which is just the budget update that I provide to y'all. So unless there's any questions there, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. We're on track there. Are we getting some feedback? Okay. How bad is it? Okay.
It's intermittent. Maybe if everyone mutes, that might help.
The next item is going to be the quarterly, the enforcement report. We can look at that. Alfonso's provided us with that information. Currently, we've got, as of the end of Q3, we had 385 complaints pending. We only received 155, which that's going to be, I think what you're going to see is that's about par for the course, the number of complaints you receive per quarter. We've got, I think, 47 priority complaints. And then, of course, the remainder are just regular priority status complaints. 31 agreed orders signed, 87 complaints dismissed by staff, 31 complaints reviewed at ISC. And you can see the oldest complaint we have is a fiscal year 2019. Patrick, is that number still accurate, though?
That number will come off the board after we vote on that case later in the agenda today.
Okay, so that's a 2019 case.
It is.
Excellent.
Okay.
When you think just a year ago where we were on this, I think it's fabulous. Great work, Darryl.
And you can tell from the numbers here that, the vast majority of the pending complaints are stacked up in 2023, with some in 2022, and then it trickles off after that. But the investigative staff and the attorney staff are doing a good job of keeping us on track there and not letting the backlog build up. So the next item we want to talk about is well, of course, we got the agreed orders and dismissals. That's just there for informational only. Patrick, do you have any updates on the SIPAC that you want to share with us?
Maybe just real quickly that they're up to about 40 jurisdictions, 39 effective. There's one that's will be effective in 2024. So about 40 jurisdictions SIPAC is active in. They've got rules out for comment right now. And they're open till October. So if anyone wants to look at those and comment on those are out there. And other than that, Texas has about almost 800 APITs issued so far.
Authorization to practice is APIT the in-person?
No, that's the TAP. The APIT is the authorization to practice interjurisdictional telepsychology. So that's why they say APIT instead of saying that mouthful.
Okay.
The TAPs there's 51 of those, the temporary authority to practice.
The APIT is the telepsych. Okay.
Yeah, for Texas, there's 51.
Okay. So, I mean, basically, SIPAC covers the vast majority of the country right now. New York is flirting with the idea. There's a bill pending in New York on SIPAC, but it hasn't gone through yet, so we're not sure. We're not sure what's going to happen there. And of course, counseling and social work continue to move. Those compacts continue to move forward as well, gaining more and more members as we go. So, I know Missouri has adopted the social work compact thus far. I think that's the only state that has, though. The next item is going to be I don't have anything to report on activities by the standardization committee. It hasn't met in the past quarter. The next item I want to talk about, and it's going to take me a little bit to kind of go over some of these, is just implementation of bills passed by the 88th legislature. Now, I provided you all with a PDF portfolio of all the bills that were enrolled or passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. Now, not all of those directly impact the agency. And so I sent you or they're maybe not worthy of talking about, but I sent you a list of bills, I guess it was yesterday or day before, that kind of directly impact the agency or our operations or the professions. Those are the ones I'm just going to kind of go over. These are the same bills I went over in my Insights Over the Lunch Hour webinar the other day that I gave. The first one is going to be House Bill 63. And basically what it says is there are no more anonymous I forgot. We had this ability.
Child abuse.
No more anonymous reports of child abuse. So that's going to be a big change I don't know that that's really going to impact our practitioners all that much, because I can't imagine a practitioner wanting to do an anonymous report and then not be able to show that he or she had, followed their duty to being able to prove that they'd actually reported some sort of child abuse or neglect that had been brought before them or that had come up before them. So I don't really expect I don't really think that's going to impact us all that much. But I did get to sit in that committee hearing, or I watched the committee hearing on that. And it was pretty interesting to watch the debate about, the policy decisions about whether that's a good idea, a bad idea, or what have you. But this is the thought that carried the day. So they changed it. There will be no more anonymous child abuse reports allowed.
By providers, by clinicians.
Anybody.
By anybody.
Anybody, yeah.
That has its ups and downs, doesn't it?
Right. And that's one of the things they talked about in the committee hearing, was just kind of what are the pros and the cons of doing this. I think there was a lot of concern, if I'm remembering right, there was a lot of concern just over kind of the false accusations and kind of the process being weaponized. The next item is going to be House Bill 139. It's a notification of rulemaking authority to the bill author. This doesn't really affect the public so much as it does us in the preambles that we have to draft whenever we're doing a proposed rule. Now there are certain additional notifications we have to give to, like, say, a bill author. If if we're claiming that a rule change is based on a bill that was passed, then we have to give notification to the bill author. I think there's like a 4-year look back window. And if he or she is still in the legislature, obviously, you know, doesn't do any good to notify them if they're not in the legislature. But there's some quirky little provisions in there that Patrick is going to have to deal with when doing rule preambles. But you guys aren't going to feel that at the council level. That's more what we have to deal with at the staff level. House Bill 2453, authority to issue digital occupational licenses. This is one that I'm kind of giddy about. I don't think we're not there yet. We're not ready to do this yet, but it's the ledge kind of getting ahead of the game and giving us authority to issue a digital license rather than just paper-based licenses. But I'm excited about it just because it shows a lot of foresight, you know, forward thinking by the legislature, and it kind of gets us ahead of the game, so to speak. Gives us the authority before we actually are ready to use it. It's nice to have it there and we can kind of plan around it. House Bill 3130 is confidentiality of domestic violence survivor personal information. This one and Senate Bill 510 are kind of tied together. Basically, what the main takeaway from House Bill 3130 is that if you're a domestic violence survivor, and you're a licensee of the agency, once the AG develops a form, you can submit that form to the agency, and then the agency has to keep confidential your name, license, not your license number, but your name, all your contact information. The reason this is going to be, I'm not sure how this is going to work out, is let's say somebody submits that form to us, let's say an LPC submits that form to us, and then they want to get on an insurance panel. If anybody then requests verification of their license, we're not going to be able to tell them who that, you know, we can verify that license exists, but we can't verify who holds the license or any of the contact information about that. So basically what you got is kind of a ghost in the system. Now, like I say, we can verify the license number, that it's active in good standing and all that, but we're not going to be able to verify who it is, or any of their contact information. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out yet. That one may be a little problematic, not so much from our ends, but I worry a little bit about how it's going to impact the practitioners when they actually try to avail themselves of the statutory right that they have under that. So
it's the right to privacy? It's
kind of a right to privacy, yeah. It's designed to protect domestic violence survivors from stalkers and what have you, but there's just, I'm not sure how that's going to work out yet.
I'm concerned about how do you bring trauma to your experience, trauma or lived experiences to your practice, still keep it private.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that one we'll have to wait and see how it shakes out. Now the next one is House Bill 4062. It's the mandated recording of child interviews and child custody evaluations. This is going to be kind of a watershed change for those of you that do, and I'm speaking more to the public now than I am the council members. This is going to be more of a watershed change for those of you that do custody evaluations. Previously, you did not have to record the child. Now you do, and it has to be an audio-visual recording of the child. Whole debate about, whether or not, that's going to impact how the child's demeanor and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. That's the law. That's what it is. It doesn't really impact us. I don't see it impacting this agency unless we start seeing the only way it would impact us is if we start seeing like a rash of complaints that deal with that. Of course, it's not effective yet. It won't be effective till September 1st, but this is just one of those deals where people that do this need to be apprised of it. That way it doesn't operate as a gotcha type scenario, because it very easily could if you don't keep abreast of what's going on in that area. So members of the public, if you do custody evaluations, then you need to be paying attention to this bill. You need to go read it. It's House Bill 4062. It's not a very long bill. It's not hard to read, but it will change the way you do interviews and child custody evaluations. Now, it does not affect non-custody evaluations. So it just general forensic practice, it's not going to affect that. It's just child custody evaluations when you're interviewing the child. Dr. Taylor, I know you and I had talked about that. Did you have anything you wanted to comment on at this time?
No, I think nothing major. I think we're going to need to probably do some PSA on this a little bit for our providers, so that they have some guidance and understanding that they're going to have to store these audio visual recordings just like records, I believe, for essentially 7 years. So we'll probably need to put together some kind of statement maybe for that, so they're aware that they need to hold those as a part of their records. I don't think that needs to be a rule, but something to let them know.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on that one or any of the bills we've covered so far?
Real quick though, Daryl, just a brief question. Since it's a law change and it didn't come from us, it came directly from the legislature, how are the professionals at large kind of notified of this law change if they're not tracking every law as diligently as you do?
They won't know about it. That's part of the problem. That's why I'm kind of preaching about it this morning.
Yeah.
Yes, hoping that this kind of gets out there a little bit.
And then what will be? Did the bill suggest a penalty if they fail to do that? Will that be like a criminal event? Will it be an administrative event?
No, it would be, we would have to, the responsibility for disciplining them would fall to us.
So how do we manage that without having a specific rule for it?
Well, it would probably fall under the what I call our catch-all rule, which is, you're responsible for obeying and complying with any and all other laws that impact the profession for the practice of counseling or psychology. And unless we take a specific look at it, the default punishment for it would be a reprimand. Because we have a catch-all, kind of a backstop set up in our rules that if the ledge passes something, or if somehow or another a practice standard gets established that we don't pass, but we're responsible for enforcing it, the backstop is everything defaults to a reprimand, and then you can aggravate up or mitigate down.
But at this point, we're considering it part of record keeping, correct?
I think it would. Yeah, I think it would fall under that.
Okay.
So did the bill direct us to craft any rules at all?
No, sir.
No. Okay.
What about when bills like this pass? What could each member board sort of notify their members? I know that there are regular communications, and so saying, take a look, or this is what it says. If each member board took it upon them or put it on their website or something like that, perhaps that would help.
Honestly, one of the best ways to get the message out is through your Insights of Lunch Hour webinars that y'all do. Those are usually very well attended by all the professions. We post them on YouTube. You can do mass emails, but I don't know how effective they are.
Yeah.
Time and time again, I get people griping about, well, I didn't get it, and I can see in the system that I use where, yeah, you did get it, you just didn't pay attention to it. So I've always felt like the webinars we do over the lunch hour, those tend to be the best education outreach efforts that we have available to us. And to some degree, what we talk about here in the meetings.
Gets out through.
Yeah, because we post all this stuff on YouTube. So,
Daryl, did you get a lot of questions about this during the Insights over the lunch hour that you hosted?
No, I did not. Very few. You got to remember, we're talking about a very small provider population that does these things.
Okay.
There are very, I don't know anybody in MFT that does them. I'm sure there are some clinical social workers. Dr. Taylor and I were talking the other day about, it's just a handful of people in psych and counseling that do them. Right. It's a very small circle of individuals.
Okay.
And it's only as a part of a child custody evaluation.
Correct.
So not any other treatment with a child, not therapy, not anything else, just only for a what I would assume would be a court-ordered child custody evaluation. I don't know of anybody that would volunteer for child custody evaluation. But
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, we do them in our clinic. We have a couple providers who do them, and they're court ordered through. We do them through Tarrant County, so they're court ordered evals.
The next one is going to be House Bill 4123. This was a big one for us. This is the DPS FBI Fingerprint Authority. You guys have heard me talk about in the past how DOJ, it wasn't just Texas, but they went to all the states and basically said, the authority that y'all have been relying upon for 20-something years now to get access to FBI fingerprint records is no longer sufficient. We don't think it works anymore. And so they said, unless you fix it, you're going to get kicked out. We're going to cut off access to that system. So Representative Guillen carried the bill in the House that basically rewrote our authority. DPS kind of shepherded it through and I worked with DPS to draft the language for us. And then DPS supposedly, from what I understand, they kind of got a pre-clearance from DOJ on this before Guillen actually sent the bill up the chain of command. But needless to say, the bill is passed. It's been signed into law. Now we're in the process of actually getting formal approval or clearance from DOJ on this thing, which I'm not expecting any problems. But the very fact that they are incredibly picky, the FBI and the DOJ is in this particular area. I mean, they are extremely nitpicky about what your statute has to say, where it is in the various codes. DPS and I got into a debate over whether I had originally wanted it in Chapter 507 so that everything is self-contained in 507, which is BHEC's enabling legislation. DPS said, well, we'd rather have it over here in 411 of the government code where all our other fingerprinting authority is. I agreed to that because that's DPS and this is kind of their show. I'm not going to throw a monkey wrench in it, but the very fact that we're having a debate over where something is located, which usually is not a controlling factor, but apparently to DOJ, it's important. The very fact that we're having to have that debate just kind of goes to show how nitpicky they are. So while I'm not anticipating any problems, I'm kind of holding my breath and crossing my fingers that this thing goes through pretty smoothly. And I'll have more to tell you at the next meeting. I'll be able to tell you, but I'm not anticipating any problems, like I say. So SB 422, this was another big change. And actually one of the rule changes you've got coming up later on, the 882.32, I think it is actually the embodiment of SB 422 and a new federal law that was passed, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but long story short, SB 422 basically expands that little unique 3-year spousal military license to also include active duty personnel. So it didn't beforehand. It used to just be if you were a military spouse licensed in another jurisdiction, you could get a license from us for 3 years, up to 3 years. And that's all it was good for. And then it would die and go away. But you always had to maintain your license in your home state. 422 just expanded that to include military service members as well.
In terms of reciprocity.
Yeah, it's kind of one-way reciprocity. It's just us saying, look, since you're already vetted and licensed in another jurisdiction, come down here, we'll give you this little 3-year temp license and you can practice down here. And then if you want to stay longer than that, you got to get a regular license. Now, the federal license or the federal law that came into play later on kind of changed the whole ball game. It basically said you don't need a license and it's good forever. So the rule we're going to look at consider adopting later on is actually an amalgamation of state law and federal law. Patrick and I tried to merge them together. So, because the federal law basically swallows the state law. So, but anyways, SB 422, that was one that passed. SB 510, pretty big deal for us. It's the confidentiality statute. It keeps not names, but home addresses, home telephone numbers, application files, all of that stuff is no longer considered public information or subject to the Public Information Act. This is one that we're actually having to do something to implement it. Most of these other bills up until now that I've talked about, we really don't have to do much to implement. but SB 510 we do. So we're working with HPC to create a checkbox in our database system so that when licensees log in, they can check a box that says, this is my home address, and it will mark it private so that it doesn't show up in any kind of public search feature or in any kind of, if somebody does a public information request for, all the licensed psychologists in Travis County, their information would not show up. Their business address might show up if they chose to give that, which is public, but their home address is not going to show up.
So
So
would they opt in or opt out?
they would have to opt in. Yeah, it's gonna, I think, well, I don't know. Now, no, they'd have to opt in because we don't know what is a home address and what is not in our system. Because the system doesn't label home, it doesn't use the label of home addresses. It uses main address and then business address. Business is always public, but you're not required to submit a business address. Main, you are required to submit, but we don't know whether that's your home address or your business address or just a PO box somewhere. So that'll be something that licensees will have to log in and check that little box, but it'll be a simple little, you check it, and that's all you have to do. SB 1045, nothing that directly affects us, but it's just the creation of the 15th Court of Appeals, which that new Court of Appeals is going to handle basically anything to do with state agencies. If we get sued, or if we discipline a licensee and they appeal it to district court, and then the district court affirms us and they appeal it to a Court of Appeals, it would then go to this new 15th Court of Appeals. So it's kind of a specialized Court of Appeals that will handle anything kind of agency or administrative law. SB 1659 changes our sunset date from 2029 to 2033. No real reason for that other than they're just aligning us with all the other Article 8 agencies that are up for sunset in 2033. Nothing nefarious, or there's no weird motives or intents there. It's just when Sunset starts reviewing everybody, they don't want to be reviewing PUC and BHEC. Those two things we don't even breathe the same air. So they want to be reviewing agencies that breathe and speak roughly the same language. SB 1893 is just a ban on TikTok devices on all state-owned devices. Governor Abbott had already ordered that a long time ago and ordered us to develop a policy along those lines. This is just the embodiment of Governor Abbott's order, so there won't be any changes here. We've already got that ban in place. A couple of bills that failed that I want to talk to you about are House Bill, and these are all bills that we were tracking pretty closely because they would have had a big impact on the agency. House Bill 1167 by Romero, its Senate companion bill was 47. This was the bill that would have created MFT, LPC, and social work licensure by endorsement. Had various time frames. MFT, just as long as you were licensed, you could get a license here. Counseling, it was 2 years, I believe. And then social work was 1 year. That bill failed. It actually made it through the Senate, but it died on the chamber floor. It made it through the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, but died on the chamber floor. It's the exact same place it died last session, in the 87th. So it's dying in the same spot every time. House Bill 4075, another one by Romero, was another MFT cleanup bill, but it also expanded, this bill would have expanded reciprocity to all the boards. Right now, Psych is the only one with reciprocity authority, but it would have given reciprocity authority for all the other boards. That died in Senate Health and Human Services. And of course, House Bill 2557, which was the counseling compact, that bill died as well in Senate Health and Human Services. So that's the update on bills that were passed by the 88th legislature or weren't passed. Any questions on any of that? Since I've sufficiently bored everybody to tears.
No.
Okay. All right.
I do have just real quick, Daryl, if you could, your opinion, and it's always hard to put opinions on political processes, but these compact bills that passed, that failed, are they dying violent deaths? Like people are just like, we're against this. Or are they just at the end when everything's busy, they're just not getting through? So there's a chance, or is this just the will of the body is like, we don't want this? I'm curious.
It's not a death by calendar. I'll say that. I don't want to say too much more in an open meeting, but they're not dying by operation calendar or by the fact that they didn't make it up for consideration. It's a conscious decision that they're dying. What I can't really speak to is kind of the motivations behind that. But I think it is an intentional decision to not let them pass. At least on the Senate side.
Yeah. It's good to know the will of the bodies. Thanks.
Yeah. The next item is going to be, well, we've already talked about 3I. I've asked for the review of our statutory authority on the criminal history stuff. 3J is just an update. The SAO audit is still underway. They're pretty close to wrapping up though, or I feel like they are. I'm expecting to meet with them probably next week, maybe later this week. I doubt this week, but more than likely next week. And then we should have a report, an audit report to show you at the next meeting, I think in October. So that's kind of the update there. That's it. That's it on topic number 3. Any questions?
Discussion.
All right.
We proceed to item 4, action items. Will you walk us through these?
Sure. The very first one is we do have a proposed order from the LPC board, Ms. Cohn, which let me see if she is in attendance. Basically, this was a default at SOA in which the LPC board has recommended revocation of the LPC's license. And of course, you've got all the information in your board packets there, so you can see that. Let me see if Ms. Cohn or her attorney are in. She has not shown up to any of our previous hearings or to the SOA hearing. Ms. Cohn, if you're in the audience, or if Ms. Cohn's attorney is in the audience, would you please raise your hand so that we can bring you up to the panelist level and let you speak if you so choose? Okay, hearing nothing. All right, Madam Chair, what the council has to decide now is whether or not it wants to adopt the LPC board's recommendation of revocation.
Madam Chair, if you entertain a motion.
Thanks, Dr. Taylor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Going once? Hearing none, then it's been moved and seconded that the license be revoked as recommended by the board, the member board. All in favor indicate by raising your hand. So be it, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay. And Madam Chair, we'll get you that order after the meeting to sign. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The next item up is going to be 4B. It's going to be the discussion about whether to discontinue the sales and mailing lists effective September 1st. I'm recommending that we stop selling mailing lists. Just so everybody out in the audience and the public doesn't panic and have vapor lock. What we're talking about doing here is a lot of the information is still going to be available via a public information request. But if you look at, I forget which Senate bill it was, I think it's Senate Bill 821, the legislature kind of overhauled what Sunset looks at whenever it's reviewing an agency. And Senate Bill 821 says, hey, we want you looking to see what kind of materials agencies are selling. And then unless they give you a really good reason for why they're doing it, you need to tell them to stop doing it. So I'm just trying to get ahead of the game now and say, look, let's just get out of the mailing list business. If somebody wants that information, they can submit a public information request. Now, they're still going to be subject to Senate Bill 510 and House Bill 3130, those things we've just talked about. But we probably need to get out of the business of selling mailing lists, and I would like to do that effective September 1st, if everyone's okay with that.
Strongly recommend it. Just from a personal standpoint, as a clinician from another area, sorry, not as a clinician, but running a dental clinic, they're for sale every 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah. From
other people's. So I agree. Is there any other discussion or remarks?
I'd like to make a
Curious,
motion.
like, when is that requested? Like, I mean, what scenario? Because It's kind of like the first I've really heard about the mailing list order.
When is it requested?
Yeah, like, I mean, what is the scenario where that even is like, does that happen a lot, or is this something?
Yeah, it
that-
happens a lot.
Yeah.
Marketing companies want to find out what your address is so they can send you CE offers and all kinds of stuff. We get those things pretty frequently.
And that comes straight to the board.
Doing public information requests on that because that's the law. But
Yeah.
we can at least get out of the mailing list business where it looks like we're complicit in it. And I mean, we got to follow the Public Information Act, but we don't have to provide a mailing list for $10 or whatever it is. So I just rather have clean hands the next time we go under sunset review on this.
Madam
I'm
Chairman,
with
I'll
you.
make a recommendation that we move to instruct our agencies to discontinue the sale of our mailing lists effective September 1st, 2023.
Thanks, Dr. Taylor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. All in favor?
Fight for the second.
Signify by saying aye. All in favor, signify by saying aye. I mean, raising your hand, excuse me. Okay, the motion passes.
All right, thank
Good
you all.
idea.
The next item up is going to be 4C, it's just review and approval of the personnel manual. I had to make some changes in that to account for I think it's SB 222 or something like that. I can't.
Yes.
SB 222. Yeah, it's the ledge has been pretty generous. They gave state employees, it's like 40 days if you have a child, and then 20 days, I think, if you. It's 40 and 20. You get paid parental leave after the birth or adoption of a child, and we need to include that in our personnel manual. So that's all this does, is it changes the personnel manual up to reflect this new law.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by oh wait, we haven't had a motion. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second. Dr. Cartwright.
Seconded.
All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Motion passes.
Right. I'll tell y'all, I'll probably have to bring another personnel manual revision back to you at the next meeting because I've got one more change that I think I'm going to have to make following a SORM review that we just underwent. I just don't have it finalized. I didn't have it finalized and ready to go for this meeting, so you'll have to look at that personnel manual one more time at least.
What's SORM?
State Office of Risk Management.
I'm not bad at acronyms.
Yeah, well, we use more than the military here. So we just finished a SORM review, so they want us to put one more thing in our 80-page personnel manual. So we said we would be happy to do so. And I'll bring that back to you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
The next item is going to be kind of a bigger ticket discussion. This is, and I sent you kind of in the email when I sent you the board meeting materials, I kind of fleshed out what this debate is about. So just so the public is clear what we're talking about here. In the post-Uvalde world, Chair Belemowitz sicked Patrick and I, he assigned us with a task for site board, and that was to figure out what we can do, what changes we can make to increase the availability and possibly the number of providers for mental health providers in the state. And he was like, I want an outside the box thinking here. So what Patrick and I did is we sat down and we looked at what our statutory authority was. And one of the things that we came up with is right now, the way BHEC views the licensure requirement is if the provider is in Texas or if the recipient of services, whether it be site counseling, social work, whatever, is in Texas, you have to have a Texas license. But what we have seen in the past is if the recipient is not here and they're in another jurisdiction and the provider, let me just give you an example. Florida psychologist comes to Texas to visit family for a month. In order for him to continue seeing patients back home via telehealth, he has to have a Texas license, whether it be a full license or temporary license, because he's located here, even though his patients are located over there. not all states view it that way. Some states say the practice of fill in the blank occurs wherever the patient or the recipient of services is located. So one of the things we looked at doing after in the Uvalde post world is we thought, would this help if we changed our view? Because it's something that I think we can do without legislative action. It's something that you guys can just do by rulemaking. And would it help if we now said, well, we don't care so much where the provider is located. We're just focused on if the recipient is here in Texas, then you have to be licensed here. So that's really what we're debating here today for the public that is watching this thing. We're not talking about doing away with licensure. We're not talking about saying you don't have to have a license to telecommute into Texas. So don't everybody get worked up about that. That is not what we're saying. But another real world example was when I think it was Hurricane Ida hit Louisiana. We had a flood of social workers. I don't know, that's a bad pun, but we had a ton of social workers come over from Louisiana as refugees. They were over here. Their patients were still back in Louisiana. So they were wanting to practice via telehealth to just their folks, their patients back in Louisiana residents, not Texans. But we said, no, you can't do it. You got to have a Texas license. That doesn't make a lot of sense in that type of a scenario. And so this is one of those deals where when John put us on it, we started looking at it. Now, it's never been one that we've talked about openly because it's not as on the nose of how to handle mobility and workforce shortages as some of the other solutions we've talked about. But some of the state associations like NASW, I've had conversations with them on this, and I know this is a issue that's important to them. And so I wanted to bring this before y'all. I didn't want to draft up a rule, ask Patrick to draft up a rule and do all of that. If y'all were like, no, we don't like that, we're not going to do it. Don't waste your time. Don't even waste your breath explaining it. What I'm trying to do here is just take your temperature and you tell me, is this something that you're just vehemently opposed to? Are you okay with it? Do you want us to move forward with preparing some rule changes that would reflect this change in the law? So that's kind of the purpose of what we're doing today. And Madam Chair, I know we've got several state associations that are watching in today. I would like to respectfully suggest that we call on them and just kind of get their input on this because they may have some viewpoints that I haven't covered.
Sure.
And it just sometimes it helps looking with a different set of eyes at this kind of a problem.
Absolutely. And I have a couple of questions. First, we're assuming that credentialing for professionals, mental health providers is pretty
standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And are you asking specifically that? Are you looking at one side more than another? Texas providers being able to be outside of Texas while they provide for Texans? Or I got a little confused when you were
well,
because there's three possibilities, right?
Right. Well, maybe. We're not really worried about Texas licensed providers telecommuting in and providing because they're licensed here. So that's not a problem. They would have to worry about what jurisdiction they were in. That jurisdiction may be like BHEC and say, yeah, we know the patient's in Texas, but you're here in our sandbox, so you have to be licensed here. We're not alone.
We wouldn't sanction them.
Say again?
We would not sanction them in that scenario. They may have to deal with whatever other state.
Alabama.
We wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be coming from us though.
Right. What we're really talking about here are non-Texas licensees who are here on probably a temporary basis, and they are delivering services outside of Texas to hopefully their home state where they're licensed. They're licensed in their home state. The patient is there. The only thing we really have control over or able to get our hands on is that person. But is what they're doing, is it actually the practice of simply because their butt happens to be here in Texas when everything else is in New Jersey.
Right.
So what I'm saying I would like y'all to discuss is that really, do we want to continue with that kind of policy outlook, or do we want to change it more so kind of like Hawaii, where Hawaii's view on psychology is we consider where the patient is located to be, that's where the practice of takes place. So Dr. Cartwright could vacation to Hawaii and yet continue to see his patients here in Texas without having to check in with Hawaii board or get a Hawaii license in any way, shape, or form. So that's what we're trying to talk about here.
Any comments before we go to the to the member agencies?
I had one. Go ahead, Dr. Skoma. I think your hand was up first.
My physical hand. I couldn't find the button for the raise hand. Obviously, with these kind of things, we want to think through worst case scenarios, those type of dynamics. It does seem to me if a Florida practitioner is practicing on a Florida client and commits malpractice, let's say, we're not going to prosecute that here. They're going to prosecute that there. Is there any way in which they could be skirting their state laws by hiding out here? Is this like an extradition type thing?
Yeah.
And to be crass, I mean, is there a place where would we care about that? Are we tasked to care about? I'm tasked to care about the protection of Texas citizens, not necessarily Florida, not at all Florida citizens. That's only my good conscience as a fellow human being. Is there any dynamic we could think of where there would be we would be causing problems for our colleagues in Florida? To use your example.
Are you wanting me to answer that now, Dr. Skoma, or is that kind of a...
Yeah, these are just the things to, have you thought that through in the process, or as we think about it?
I can't think of a danger to us not prosecuting somebody here. Your first question was, are we basically creating an environment where somebody can skirt Florida law? I don't think so, because
an asylum sort of thing.
Yeah, you're holding a Florida license. You're treating somebody in Florida. They've got jurisdiction over you by virtue of that license. Now, you said that there's one real world example I can give you where it was a weird situation. And if you think back to the enhanced interrogation stuff that went on during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, there was a Texas psychologist that either developed or helped develop all those enhanced interrogation techniques. And he was operating in CIA black sites in the Ukraine, Afghanistan, and all that, operating overseas. We actually had a complaint filed against that individual for that. Nothing took place in Texas. Nothing. All the victims, I don't want to say patients because that's certainly not a fair characterization, but all the victims of that were overseas. And basically we couldn't do anything with that complaint because there were major evidentiary problems. But there was a question of, do we even have jurisdiction over something that occurs outside of our borders? Now, I think the distinction between that and what you're talking about is, you got a citizen in Florida who's receiving treatment from somebody outside of Florida. There's a connection there. In civil procedure, federal civil procedure, we call it like minimum contacts. So you've got a jurisdictional nexus, if you will. Whereas we had no jurisdictional nexus other than the fact that the guy doing these things in Afghanistan and Ukraine happened to hold a Texas license. And our position was, that's not the practice of psychology in Texas under his license, therefore really can't do anything. So, but you asked, and so there's a little bit of an analogous scenario there, but I'm not too worried about that. And then I've already forgotten the question because I rambled so long.
It's okay. Would we be causing problems potentially for our colleagues in other states by creating an untouchable asylum type situation? I don't think so. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I know there are other states that view it like this already, and it hasn't. You know, what I always tell people is when we start looking at kind of a new thing to dip our toe into, I always look to see, well, is it being done anywhere else, and has their world fallen apart as a result of it? And I'm like, it hasn't. So I don't have any reason to believe that it's going to be problematic. Okay. Anyway, I'll shut up so the doctor.
Sounds reasonable. I just wanted to push the boundaries a little bit.
And Dr. Scum, I apologize that I think I called you. You and Chris are together on the screen, so I'm seeing two beards. Apologize for that. Dr. Taylor.
Everybody with a beard looks alike. I understand.
From this distance and with these old eyes, yes.
Sure. Well, you know, as a Florida boy, I do kind of have to defend my home state for a minute, which is a bad argument because Florida has opened up the telehealth opportunity for anybody outside of Florida as well. So it's actually a pretty interesting program they have there. And then also, Mark, that sounds like a terrible vacation. So I hope you don't actually go to Hawaii and try to see patients over telehealth. That just seems terrible. But I guess my big question really, Daryl, is do we have the authority? Like, does Texas actually have the authority to tell somebody who is just visiting here that they can't practice under their license from their other state? That seems like a bit of an overreach to me.
And that really is the ultimate question is can we, I mean, right now we say you can't, but I think it's within our jurisdictional purview to say, you know what, that's you practicing under your Florida license to someone back home in Florida. That's not even the practice of psychology in Texas. Therefore, it doesn't even activate our jurisdiction for you, and so you can do it. I just that's the question that y'all are going to have to debate and answer.
Yeah, I guess it just seems to me that we're opening ourselves up to some legal concerns here with overreaching into another state's purview. I mean, if this Florida therapist came here to Texas and then saw some patients in Florida via telehealth, and we tried to sanction him for that, it seems like any complaint or any lawsuit would just be redirected to Florida, right? They would handle it. They're his licensee. I mean, he never signed a license agreement. He never applied in the state of Texas. I mean, other than maybe arguing you're practicing here without a license, other than that, I don't see what disciplinary action we could take.
Mr. Hallbauer, you're an attorney. Any thoughts?
Yeah, the attorney in me was planning to listen to all the discussion and then ask Daryl if we need to get an OAG opinion on this. If there was the appetite to go further. Daryl, do we at this point, I can go either way on this one. If some guidance out of the AG office might be helpful, if everyone else kind of feels the same way, that they could go either way.
John, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so Daryl sent this out. It's the Occupations Code section 113.02, patient located outside of the state. And I'll summarize this. I don't need to read it verbatim here. I've read this, and I'm glad the question of the AG opinion just came up. I've read this. I'm not a lawyer. To me, it seems rather permissive of this because it talks about essentially notwithstanding any other law, a health professional may provide a mental health service that is within the scope of their license. I'm paraphrasing here, through the use of telemedicine, medical service, or telehealth. And then it gets specific here to a patient who is located outside of this state, to a patient who is located out of this state, applicable to any regulation of the jurisdiction in which the patient is located. So to me, that's kind of it right there. It seems rather permissive. And that's the legislature. That's not a rule that we've passed. That's the law of Texas.
Yeah, and is there a specific definition for how we define location? So with your,
I mean, it says outside of this state. I think it's specific in that regard. Is that what you're asking?
A Florida therapist is in Texas providing telehealth to their Florida patient who also happens to be in Texas at the time of the session, what's the location here?
I think that's a good question. I think that according to the law, hang on, to a patient who is located outside of this state that is verbatim. So if they are not located out of this state and they're providing services in this state to a patient in this state, they would have to get a Texas license. But if the practitioner is in this state providing services to somebody via telemedicine outside of this state, then carry on.
We're declaring location to be the physical location of both the therapist and the patient at the time of the session.
We're having location identity issues.
Yeah, okay.
You know, let's see if we can hear. Are there any member or state? What did you say, Daryl? The groups,
The state association.
Why don't we listen to them and then let's see what more how we're like.
Hang on, Dr. Cartwright. We all were kind of going. Dr. Cartwright has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. No, I was just wondering, like, if it went to rulemaking, would there be like an identification of when these cases apply? Obviously, it's pretty obvious. Like the Maui situation is an obvious one right now. Hurricanes, catastrophes. But would there be like a definition of that, or somewhat of what would qualify for that event? And then secondly, if it went to a rulemaking stage, if it needed to go to a rulemaking stage, would there be like a limit on it, or would there be like, at what point would it stop? Like kind of like a emergency order, or I don't know, just things to think about if it did go to that stage, as to whether, I don't know if that would want to be in the rulemaking piece of it. Just things to think about. I don't know, like, if you all thought about that, or how it would look in a rule, but just things I was thinking about.
And I'm thinking just about the bureaucracy involved. I can't imagine on just a small case. So somebody used the vacation idea. So someone's here for a month. First of all, how the heck would we even find out? And then just the bureaucracy of working through that rule could hamper us when we've been working for 4 years now to become more efficient and more effective. That's something to be considered as well. Should we hear from Ms. Moore? And is it?
Well, Diane's
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, she.
Do we have another association spokesperson in attendance who might want to?
Let's see here. If the state associations, if your representatives would raise your hands. It's like I've got Shannon. Are you ready, Madam Chair, to hear from them?
Yes, and is Shannon? Yes.
Shannon Noble. She's going to be for.
There we go. Here's some people jumping in.
Let's
hear from her.
Shannon, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Ma'am.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon Noble. I represent the Texas Counseling Association, and we are in favor of changing the current rules to allow an out-of-state practitioner who's temporarily in Texas to serve their clients back in their home state. I just wanted to make a couple of points. One is that the Occupations Code section 113.002, which was cited, I believe only applies to Texas licensees counseling their clients who leave Texas, not to what we're talking about, which is the out-of-state practitioners being in Texas. Second, I wonder if the current rules don't give rise to a restraint of trade issue, because we are saying basically, if you're a Florida LPC, you can't treat your Florida patients while you're in Texas. And I agree with the chair that there's no rational basis for that, and it would under the current law, it could create administrative nightmare if we started trying to enforce the way it's written. And finally, in the absence of our ill-fated compact bill and failure of the other bills that would have provided some reciprocity. This is, to me, sort of a do unto others issue. The more states that adopt rules that allow this type of out-of-state practice, the easier it's going to be for all of our licensees. Meaning, if Texas takes this step to allow the Florida licensee in Texas to counsel its clients back in Florida, then perhaps, other states will see that and do the same thing. I just think it's, as long as they're not trying to treat patients that they meet in Texas, I don't see any problem with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Noble.
Ms. Dawson, did you have some comments you wanted to give us on this matter? Betty, can you hear me?
No.
You didn't have anything? You didn't have anything?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. Okay. I think it's a detriment to the client if the provider must leave the state for some reason, like a disaster or something, and the client is left behind. They continue to need services, and to restrict the provider from providing the services that the client needs in another state does not seem to be really what most providers want to do. And I'm also concerned with the other way. Is there, I mean, the geography is very important, but if you are a current resident of a state and the provider is a resident of the state, is there any kind of legal argument that then can be said that you're practicing within the purview of the state? And if a provider here in Texas is seeing a client here in Texas who is then sent to Nebraska to work for a month, is it possible for that Texas provider to continue to provide services to the Texas client who resides in Texas most of the time, while that person is working in Nebraska on a very limited time frame?
I can Betty, what we're talking about now wouldn't restrict a Texas provider.
I understand that, yes, but I mean, there's apparently a need in the reverse also.
Yes. Yes.
But I understand we're not talking about it right now.
Right. Mr. Crum, did you have comments you wanted to give? Philip?
Good morning. Philip Crum here with the Association for Mental Health Professionals. I had some really eloquent notes put together, but you've pretty much destroyed all of them. Actually, I'm in agreement with your scenarios, the Louisiana disasters and so forth. As long as there's several steps here, actually, 1, 2, and 3. The person providing the counseling care, the services, is unlicensed and in Texas, but is licensed in the state to which they are delivering services. Life is good, and the state of Texas probably has no jurisdiction as to tell them what they can and can't do in that scenario. I think the second thing to consider, and Dr. Scoma has done a pretty good job of intended consequences, which is what I meant by destroying my notes here. He's already addressed most of them. I'm wondering what unintended consequences there might be regarding liability for the state of Texas from someone delivering services from Texas that is unlicensed and doing so into another state. And the third and final, and I understand this is not exactly where we're going, but it's a very closely related point. The issues that are involved in delivering services into another state, a counselor has to take those into consideration. Of course, the platform has to be HIPAA compliant. So there's federal concerns, there's other state concerns. What are you triggering in another state doing business there? Of course, I think that has more to do with a Texas licensee than it does somebody from another state. So it's an issue, or again, as Dr. Skoma said, don't know that we even care about that. So I think the original issue here is, and the one we need to focus on, of course, is someone temporarily here from another state be required to have a Texas license? And the answer is probably no. And that Daryl's catch-all rule takes care of everything else I've brought up. And that's it for me.
Thank you.
Mr. Francis, you have some comments you want to give?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. This is Will Francis from the National Association of Social Workers Texas chapter. I'll try to be brief because I concur with everything that everyone said. What you really told people is that really you follow the rules that are in place where the client is located at the time of services. People will often say, oh, I have a client from Texas, they're a resident here and they're in Iowa, can I treat them? And I say, you got to look at what Iowa says, because ultimately that's where they are and that's where the jurisdictional piece is. I think that's really what we look at. And so as long as someone's licensed, we just don't think we need two jurisdictions looking over the same set of services. As long as they have that license, that the public has the ability to essentially take recourse should there be a concern, then that's where they need to go. No matter where the person is, they ultimately can have their license removed from that jurisdiction. I would just add, when it comes to billing, when it comes to networks, when it comes to all those pieces, it's about that home state piece. And then the example I always use with people is, you can be on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and if you have telehealth services, you can provide those services to that client. And so essentially, it's not you that's really the matter piece. It's really where that client is. And so we're very much in favor of really ensuring that anyone who is licensed in a jurisdiction can see a client who is in that jurisdiction at the time of services. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Grothues?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Yes, I'm Carol Grothues. I am representing TPA, Texas Psychological Association, and I am definitely in favor of this, Mr. Spinks, and I think I'm so happy that you and Chair Balamowitz are looking at expanding this. The issue that I see is it's very clear in SIPAC that you have to be in your home state when delivering telehealth. And I don't understand exactly why they have that restriction, because telehealth is going to make us review how we practice, and providing services is going to be key. And the key for me is who is going to be ultimately providing protection for consumers, and where you're licensed and where your patients are shouldn't matter as much as that they know you have this license and this is where they're going to proceed with any difficulties or complaints that they have and how they can be protected. So the geography of the location when you're providing telehealth seems to be less important in that aspect. But we want to find out, it's like, is there a way we can expand this so that in the telepsychology area doesn't matter as much as it did prior to that era? I think most psychologists want more flexibility to provide the care that they need under the right regulations. We just want to make sure that it's clear. And I know I'm not being clear about that, but I think you're following where I am. So I'm not sure about the compacts and what we can do about that legislation. I'm sure that was part of trying to meet all the state issues that they want to have, but it's very clear in SIPAC that you have to be in your home state when providing services. So it doesn't help that. I'd love for y'all to be able to expand that.
So circling back, I'd like to look at the end before I call on anybody else. I'm wondering if we look back at what the intent of this exploration was. The intent was to address access to care and workforce shortages. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, and it seems as if, well, it doesn't seem. We all know that telehealth is improving access to care across the lines. John, I'm wondering, since you and I can't remember who else looked at it together, Stephen? No. Tell me about workforce shortages. Do you feel like this addresses the shortages in the workforce,
it increases mobility, whether or not it's somebody coming here for vacation or someone coming here, say a spouse got another job and they're able to, not break that continuity of service with their clients via telehealth. So this is one of those things when we address the workforce shortage, what I'm looking at is, do no harm, and then also make sure that we're decreasing barriers when and where appropriate. And I think it's appropriate here to reduce this barrier, because again, it allows people to come to Texas and says that, kind of safe harbor, we're not coming after you. And in practice, this probably happens all the live long day already. So, why are we letting it hang out there?
Right. Just as a consumer, having seen the same therapist for 12 years, if she leaves, I'm going wherever she's going, licensed or not. I don't think she'd agree with me, but I'd be following on the maintenance plan.
I'll share this. And this would be totally permissible under, I think, Texas. But if it was the other way, having experienced this already personally, I think it's a good thing. Our therapist went on vacation, and I wasn't aware of that, and asked if she could fit us in. She was on vacation, and she took an hour to see us, and she was not in the state. So if that's good enough for me, why shouldn't that be good enough for another state?
So folks, should we develop a rule and then go to the Attorney General, or should we go to the Attorney General and get some feedback and then go back and visit the rule? What's the best way to proceed? Because we haven't voted yet, but I'm hearing consensus. What would be the right way to start the process, Darren?
What I would recommend is, if y'all want to start down this process, let me visit with the governor's office first to see, because they're going to have some input in this as well through their rule review process. Let me make sure that we're not going to be doing something that misaligns with the governor. I'm a little torn about whether to contact like Senate Health and Human Services Committee or something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do there.
So maybe we trust your approach and get some consensus.
Yeah, if you want to do this, what I would say is let Patrick and I start working up a draft. Let me visit with the governor's office to kind of see what they think about this idea. And then I can kind of go from there about whether or not I want to seek input based on my discussions with the governor's office. I can kind of go from there and see whether or not I want to seek input from other official sources.
Okay, so before we proceed with discussion, we need a motion to pursue the matter at hand. Do I have a motion to move forward or not? Well,
I tell you what, I don't even need y'all. I don't even need you to put ink to paper or a motion like that. I'm just trying to figure out if y'all are vehemently opposed to this, then this would have been the end of it. But if nobody's like opposed to it, then I can keep going forward. I don't need a formal motion. I can keep going forward, and because right now we're just exploring. We're not committing to anything right now. So I can go
I
forward
think
on my own authority.
Anthony had his hand up. Anthony had his hand up here for a bit.
You get 3. Go ahead, Dr. Scott.
Just quickly, it occurs to me, 30 years ago, Bill Clinton famously questioned what is. And what we're doing is questioning where is. And the reality is where has changed. If we will all do the Brady Bunch number real quick, and look at our colleagues, this is where we are. We are having a meeting that we could not have had 5 years ago, where we are in Houston, we are in Austin, we are in different places, but we are here in this space called Zoom, called whatever. And so the goalposts have moved and they're not moving back. I logged into my MFT meeting last month from Sicily. That didn't mean the Italian government was infiltrating Texas regulatory authority. It didn't mean I suddenly became an Italian. It meant a Texan was somewhere else, and the world is shrinking. And we're going to be seeing more and more of this. And I think this is an important low-hanging fruit, that with this dynamic, it neither breaks Texans' legs nor picks their pocket, what a Florida practitioner does with Florida counselors while at a beach house in our state. So I think this is smart and has to happen if we're going to be progressive at all on this. Everybody's going to go to this, and I'd like us to lead the way. That's all.
I see John and Mark. Dr. Cartwright.
Yeah, I actually just kind of more for to piggyback on Dr. Grothu's and kind of more for Patrick. So Patrick, on the SIPAC side of things, is there a way that, you can get the temperature over there and see what their thoughts on that and how they, would, even just from a rules standpoint with SIPAC, is that something that you think would even be a possibility for them to begin discussing in terms of does it have to be in the actual state you're in, or is that just like a non-starter for them? I'm just kind of curious what your take is with SIPAC and the temperature that you've gotten, and if that's something that from not a legislative perspective, but from being on the board there, if that's an area that maybe we can begin to pursue or kind of light a fire and get those discussions going.
Yeah, the real problem with that is the requirement that the APIT holder be in their home state of licensure before they provide teleservices through SIPAC. That's in the model language that each legislature has had to adopt as a statute. And so in 40 jurisdictions, they've all enacted statutes in those legislatures requiring that. So there's not really a rule change that SIPAC could do because it would contradict that specific statutory requirement. Essentially, what they'd have to do is go back to each jurisdiction and change that in the statute. And so I think that would be difficult once the ball is you're 40 jurisdictions in, right? You're really far down. Is it possible? Sure, but I don't think there's anything rulemaking wise. Why it was drafted that way, I don't know exactly. That's just the model that they came up with, SIPAC came up with, and that's just what they did.
Yeah, I would think that if it was like an emergency situation, they would be potentially, I don't know. That may be different than just, okay, I'm on vacation here, but it's like Dr. Skoma's point, the whole world's moving there. And I think that, I don't know, I would love to be able to say we could lead the way in this, but I see your point too, that it's actually embedded into the legislation that created it in the first place. So interesting. I just wanted to get your take on it.
John?
Thank you. When I go back to the occupations code, first of all, I think that there is obviously broad consensus that this is a good idea. No one on the board, no one on the public, no one in terms of regulated stakeholders thinks this is a bad idea. So I think it's kind of rare actually to have such broad, unopposed consensus. Again, not a lawyer, but I'm reading the occupations code. When the occupation code is referring to a mental health professional, they could have said that that's a health professional licensed in Texas. They didn't. It's just a health professional. So upon the my plain reading of this, I think we have the authority. I think we all think it's a good idea. And I think we should go full steam ahead on whatever we need to interpret it this way, whether that's a rule or whether that's just a policy statement. I would leave it to our attorneys to give us some direction on what they would need to enact that, assuming that that is the direction that the board wants to go. But to me, this is clear. It's a no-brainer. It's a good idea. And I think that we can.
Is that a motion?
Help me out, Daryl, in terms of what do you need in order to enact kind of the opinion that
I don't need a motion. I just need to know if there's a general consensus that we're all kind of in agreement for me to move forward and continue to explore this.
Yeah, Daryl, this is just a directive to change interpretation. Is that correct?
Well, there would be rule changes that would need to be made to give effect to this, but that's not what we're doing right now. We're not voting to make the change right now. I just wanted to take y'all's temperature and see, are you okay with me continuing to move forward with this? Because if you weren't, I wasn't going to waste my time writing rules, calling the governor's office, and doing all this other rigmarole I've got to do.
Right.
Okay, so
authorizing you to bring us something to vote on, basically.
Yeah, procedurally, are you going to speak with the governor's office and then draft a rule for us?
I don't know procedurally how I'll do it. I'll probably work up just a rough draft just so that I can have the mechanics of how it would work in my mind squared away whenever I talk to the governor's office.
Ms. Rogers,
and you are.
Sorry.
I apologize, Chair Canseco. Go ahead.
I'll come right back to you, Stephen. Ms. Rogers, are you okay with this? Sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. No, I can read your lips. About can she comment?
If you're okay with it, Asia, just give us a thumbs up.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Sorry about that.
Old school here.
I was going to say we could just all put our hands up for with kind of moving forward with it. We're interested in it and want to proceed in discussion and thoughts and.
All right. Me too. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
We're on item 5. Is that right?
4E. Yeah. Does anybody need a break?
I'm wondering the same thing. Does anybody need a break? Why don't we take a 10-minute
short one?
Yeah, why don't we take a 10-minute? It's 11:26 a.m. Say we come back here, what, 11:35?
It's 11:35 right now, according to mine.
Oh, no.
11:45.
This clock is wrong.
Don't go by that one.
Okay,
Just go by that one up
say.
there. 11:35 up there is what it is.
Okay, I believe you. It's 11:35. Why don't we come back at 11:45? Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
It is 11:48 on August 15th, and we're resuming session. We're recording, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe we're on item 5, rulemaking.
Nope, 4E.
4E.
Yep. This is going to be a topic that Chair Hallbauer and Vice Chair Taylor will kind of lead the discussion.
Great.
Lay it out for us.
Great. Who wants to start?
I'll go ahead, Chair Canseco. Dr. Taylor, chime in here whenever you feel like it. Council, Daryl included information regarding item 4E in the packet today because he believed that there was a pretty good likelihood that the LPC board would vote this through at our meeting on Friday. That turned out to be the case. The board voted unanimously to essentially allow Texas LPCs that obtain their doctorate following initial licensure to apply to have a updated license issued from the state that would add their PhD credentials. This has been a discussion topic for the LPC board for some time. The key points in favor have been that there is a benefit to the public by having a clear statement on the license of the educational attainment level of the LPC. there's some general feeling that that this is a good thing, that those are our licensees that obtain the doctorate, it should be, in fact, properly addressed on the state issued license. There's also some arguments that the PhD credentials have a benefit on the amount of insurance payments that go to the therapist. These are all arguments in favor of doing this. To be fair and to give you an informed analysis, there are arguments against this. The biggest one came from staff, and that is, it kind of breaks down to the fact that the staff position is that this is not an essential responsibility for licensure. You do not, once that license is issued, staff views it as you have met all the proper requirements for licensure as an LPC, and the addition of PhD doesn't really change anything as far as your licensure status. That's a compelling argument, but also along the lines of doing this, putting staff on this task takes away from mission critical responsibilities down there in Austin, in that since it is not determinative for licensure, doing this takes resources away from those tasked with the essential determination on licensure, which is yay or nay, have you met the initial requirements? I think on Friday's meeting, I viewed it as there's concerns over the death by 1,000 cuts on BHEC efficiency, so to speak. Earlier in the meeting, we took a look at how licensure processing speeds have been shortened. Complaints are down. A lot of the measurables are in a really good place from where they were originally. And the argument is, if we start to, everybody's happy with those measurables, so then it starts going the opposite way. If we start doing these niche interests of each individual board, that pulls staff off of the essential mission, and there's a concern that those mission critical measurables then start to creep back. And that's a legitimate concern. We're receptive to that. What got voted out of the LPC board is that there would be a $54 fee for this. It's my understanding that in theory, that sounds like, well, that helps with staff, but then it was explained to me that, well, that money just goes into GR, so it's not a direct benefit to BHEC, which again I get. But what also was voted out is that there would be a disclaimer statement in that, in anticipation of an initial rush of interest to get this done, this could possibly take up to 180 days for a turnaround. And basically also with the disclaimer that it may take even longer than that, again, owing to the fact that this is not a mission critical responsibility, and therefore these will be processed. And don't get me wrong, these will require some processing, because there's going to be an evaluation on whether a PhD credential is a counseling or counseling related PhD, because those are the only ones that are going to be able to officially go on the license. So there is some analysis time. And because of that, these will be evaluated on when we have some time available, we'll get to these. The staff has indicated, yes, we can do this. However, here are our reservations. The LPC board heard all those reservations, but this was voted out of our board and is here today for your consideration. So Dr. Taylor, add on anything to that you'd like.
Mr. Chair, as usual, you summed it up just fine. The only thing I would say is, one of the things that were, brought up several times when it comes to the application to insurance billing is that, we're not doing this with the consideration that we're doing it for the insurance companies. I definitely want to caution us, the LPC board, and this council as well, against getting into a habit of, passing rules or regulations based off of private third-party companies and what they might or might not do. So we definitely, while those points were brought up, we definitely want to make that clear that we're not doing this because they have a regulation or they told us to or anything like that. So this is nothing really to do with the insurance companies, more so than for the public, to assist a member of the public and finding a therapist who's the right fit for them, who might have a certain type of education or training, and it's just designed to help them with that process.
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. Taylor. That also reminded me, one of the concerns that was brought up in public comment is perhaps that this would be giving special consideration to our licensees that have their PhD, and that's not the board's responsibility, is to be accommodating these, I guess, a higher education level, and therefore that kind of creates this discrepancy when everybody has the same license, but now it appears that staff has kind of created this specialty level, and that was brought up in public comment. And again, this is part of an informed discussion on this issue. So that's where things stand. Patrick, like I turned to you on Friday, is there anything to add on the staff concerns on this?
I think Daryl had a really good summary of all the different issues, but I mean, the biggest concern is the death by 1,000 cuts. I think for staff is that we're focused on the mission critical, getting the license issued. You covered this, and we don't want to. Once the numbers start looking good, we don't want to then, the ship's running good. We don't want it to all of a sudden get off task and then we're off course doing all these other things, and the numbers aren't looking good because we're doing non-mission critical things. So the other issue to bring up too is that if we start going this way, we will need some rule changes. For example, if we're going to start charging a fee, the 885.1 fee rule would need to be amended to, list the fee, and that sort of, there will be some procedural rules that will need to be implemented for this.
Dr. Skelman, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a clarifying question. If I were an LPC practitioner and my office burned down, is there a process for where I could receive a new wall license? Is there a procedure? If I were to divorce, I were a woman, let's say, and I want to go back to my maiden name, is there a process to receive a new wall license for that?
Yes.
So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're adding another dynamic, it seems to me, that is not I don't think it's a vanity dynamic. I think it's a key part of a person's life. And so it doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me. So I'd be willing to support this measure.
Anybody else?
Dr. Skoma, to your point, that there's no, if the office burns down or if there's a divorce and we need a name change, it does not require staff analysis. I think that's the difference here. I know that any university can create a new title of doctorate, and if that or a doctorate obtained overseas, or basically there is a degree of analysis that would be required of staff on a few of these. Some of these, if you have a doctorate in, if you have a doctorate in counseling from the University of Texas, well, that's pretty simple. But it's where the counseling or counseling related, and counseling related is where kind of the gray area pops up, and that's where it does require some staff analysis on this. It's very similar to what they typically have to do on evaluating a master's degree, whether this certain master's degree that came from a foreign country or was just recently created, and it's a matter of initial impression on how we're going to interpret this degree. There is some debate of whether it truly falls under the counseling related, because if it is, you can get your doctorate in something that is not counseling or counseling related, but that's not going to apply. That would not.
It would seem, wouldn't it be that most of the onus though would be on the applicant? We're going to make them send a certified transcript, something like that, and then yes, in a handful, a percentage, small percentage, we might go, where is this place? And you look it up. But if it's a legitimate transcript from an accredited institution and it fits the right doctorate, I just don't see it. Slippery slope argument, but I don't see it.
Okay, but Dr. Scoma, I would say that's how the LPC board felt about it. They view that the benefit to this really outweighs the. I think what, aside from an initial rush, because we do have 30,000 LPCs, we don't have a good indication of how many of those have obtained their doctorates, but there's still an anticipated as an initial rush on this. That other than that, the benefit to doing this outweighs the what's going to be a new burden on staff.
John?
So thank you, Madam Chair. My concern is, I share a lot of staff's concern, and I've been here long enough to have lived through a lot of these licensing backlogs. It's part of why BHEC exists. I remember, getting calls from legislative offices and legislators, not just chirping at us, like asking us, like, what the heck's what's going on over there? And being asked point blank, like, what's going on over there is not a very fun place to be. And so to be doing a non-core regulatory thing that's going to be taking time away from staff, being asked to increase a fee, being asked I know that we've kind of minimized the in this discussion. I've heard the economic discussion kind of minimized, but we're asking to make a distinction where some people ostensibly are going to charge more and other people are going to charge less, of which today that distinction does not exist. So I don't really have this is not a very hard decision for me. I think it's a non-regulatory thing, and I'm not in favor of this for those reasons.
Chair Blumos, could you clarify for me, please, your comment on allowing some to charge more and others less?
We're talking about insurance reimbursements. And so if somebody gets to charge more, that means some people are charging less.
Well, no, those people would not be charging more. They would be billing the insurance the same as they do now. The insurance would just theoretically, and again, this is not a driving factor for us because this is an unknown element. They theoretically would get reimbursed more, similar to, say, a psychologist.
I understand, and that's I think we both see it. I guess we come to different conclusions. But we're asking our board to enact policies and rules that create a distinction where one does not exist today.
Dr. Cartwright?
Yeah, and I see benefit in it, from the LPC perspective. I also see all the points that obviously staff have made and that Daryl's laid out. One of my other questions, though, would be, so if the if LPCs are going to be able to do this, then would that then apply to all LMSWs that then go on to get a PhD while still an LMSW? LCSWs that go on to get a PhD while an LCSW, LSSPs, LPAs, and LMFTs. So, I mean, I don't know if you can leave one out or leave one grouping out if you do that with another. Just that came to mind. I don't know if there's a distinction between or the reason why that may apply on the LPC board and not the others. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit and give me your thoughts.
From my perspective, not having been there, if I had a PhD, it would be sitting in a frame right over my head so that everyone could see it. I might even applique it and wear it on my lapel. So in terms of recognition, it's certainly there. In terms of licensing, I feel like it could intrude on the progress that we've made. I can remember when I first took this position, was that in 2019? Yeah. The heat was already over. The Sunset Commission had already finished, and I can remember getting plenty of heat and remember Daryl relaying that too. I'd hate to see us take a step backward in order to recognize educational attainment that everybody can recognize by framing their diploma, frankly. Patrick.
I just wanted to follow up on the point Dr. Skoma and Chair Halbauer were making about the analogy of the name change sort of situation. There are current council rules in place for that, and so that's a process that's already there's a forms they can use and rules in place, BHEC rules in place for that. So that sort of goes back to my previous point of if we go this direction, I think it's important that we would need to amend the rules because for these sorts of procedures, so that it's clear there's not any public misunderstanding and that staff understands how to process these, but also I would say the majority of the transcripts we get are there's not an issue with them, but there's some strange ones that come in, and that's where having a rule that helps deal with them, and especially, we get foreign transcripts, and we need to make sure that we tie into some of the rules we have about how to treat those. So I think there will need to be, if the council wants to go this direction, some, those are sort of the rules I'm talking about. So we'll make sure that the process is smoothed out.
Dr. Skoma?
The chair of my board, Marriage and Family Therapy, just sent me a picture of her LMFT license and said that when she got her PhD, she informed the board and they sent me a new license with my PhD after my name. This is not radical. This is something we're already doing in MFT. And I think, honestly, I hear these dynamics, but I think it's small potatoes. The extra work will be on staff, considering how important this is to our members who have worked so incredibly hard to achieve this. And I think it's a small dynamic to do. Plus, there's the other added dimension of, let's remember as BHEC, our role here is not to micromanage what our member boards do. And the LPC guys and gals have studied this in detail and have voted on it unanimously. And so I simply don't see enough here in any way to overturn what they've considered and worked on when other boards like ours already do it, just as something the staff would do for you if you ask. So that's my
LMFT already does this as long as you make a request?
No, Steve, no. We discussed this in our meeting that this was happening when we were at HHSC. This was already happening. We were already doing it. LPCs were doing it as well. The licensee would just say, hey, here's my diploma, here's my degree. Would you update my license, please? And they would just do it and send it back. When we moved to BHEC, that system that HHSC was using, whatever they were doing, didn't carry over to BHEC. And now the legal concern is that our attorneys feel like we don't have a legal avenue to do that process. And so thank you so much for bringing that up, Dr. Skoma, because we have been doing it. And there are licenses in the field right now that do exist with PhD on them that are LMFTs, that are LPCs. I don't know about LCSWs and the rest, but I do know that those exist.
Mr. Spear?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to remind everybody that a couple of years back, we got a letter from the governor asking us to look at all of our rules and take out anything that doesn't have a public health benefit to it. This has no public benefit to it. I'll yield.
Tim, I do disagree with you on that. I do think there is some benefit to the public for a public member that might be in search of a therapist of a specific type or with a specific training or degree. I think that can offer some assistance. I don't know that that's a.
We won't be able to show it on the verification, on the online verification is the problem. And so it doesn't do that. That's my point. It doesn't do what you guys are saying it's going to do.
One other thing I'd like to add on the Sheriff Hallbauer mentioned the death by 1,000 cuts. I'll tell you, that's probably my primary concern. And, you know, I recognize we can tell applicants that, look, the application to have your doctoral degree put on your license it stands secondary to our primary mission of actually getting people licensed. The problem is that is not going to satiate them whenever it goes 2 or 3 months. They're not going to accept that. And they're gonna call, they're gonna email, they're gonna write their legislator. I'm gonna be dealing with state reps and senators who, when we back burner this so that we can handle the primary stuff, they're gonna call me and go, Spinks, what are you doing? This thing, you've had this thing for 6 months. Yes, well, we back burner those. And then I'm gonna have to explain all that. So I mean, it's just because we say this is going to be treated secondarily to actual licensing, that's not going to make that problem go away. And so just be cognizant of that. I would ask whenever y'all are making your decision.
Dr. Cartwright, I'm going to ask for someone to consider calling the question just after Dr. Cartwright has a chance to speak.
Just a question on this, and I mean, this may not fall under the purview of where this would be done, but is it possible to ask for an OAG opinion, or is that just not even like something that
not on this? This isn't a statutory question. It's just how do you really, what we're talking about here is how do you want to use your resources? You got a finite pool of resources. How do you want to use them?
Daryl, I'm thinking of calling the question, but I noticed that we had 2 comments. Do you want to make sure they're not from member associations?
Well, I hadn't planned on taking. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
A question real quick.
Yes.
Daryl, where are we with the, is this something that has to go to the governor's review as well, or where are we with that process?
Well, I mean, the rule changes we have to draft in order to accomplish this will have to go over to the governor's office. Yes.
Gotcha.
So
that would come later.
I asked that we call the question. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I move second.
Question has been called. All of those in favor?
Are we going to have this? Are we going to have discussion?
Hang on. Are we?
Oh yes. Sorry. I feel like we had it. Yes, you're exactly right.
Okay. Every time when a psychology license is issued, they always say PhD on them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this would be a situation where an LPC gets their initial license and it has their master's credential on it, but then they later on go on and get their PhD, but they wouldn't get a new license that says PhD. And that strikes me as, I think that's kind of unfair to the LPC that goes on to get their doctorate. And I believe that creates confusion to the public, because that person holds themselves out as Dr. Christopher Taylor, but then it's not up on their license, and there's some question, well, why isn't it on your license?
If I may, I'll take that. One of the requisite requirements of being a psychologist, getting that psychology license, is the doctorate. And so for this license, that is not a requirement.
It's the minimum threshold for licensing. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, but John, do you think that there's not a benefit to the public to see that their therapist has PhD on their license?
We don't, I mean, the point is we don't issue the PhD. And so there's going to be a diploma, they're going to have their resume, there's going to be plenty of other ways that they're going to be able to communicate that they're reached the doctoral standard. But in terms of the license, it's not a doctorate is not required for the license. In same way with other like I guess school, like a school psychologist. I mean, if a school psychologist went and got a doctorate after that degree, we wouldn't, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not going to go back and issue a new license with doctor on it. They're going to be able to say that they're a doctor, but we're not going to go issue a new license because that's not part of that standard.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
Chair Canseco, if I may, just one moment before we vote on this. I would say, Dr. Taylor, I think you're in agreement that based on the discussion between our board on Friday when we unanimously approved this, as well as the public comment that we received on it during public comment session, this is a very important issue to Texas LPCs, of which there are 30,000. There is a benefit to it, to the public, by just enabling staff to be able to issue a new license. It was done in the past, and we feel as though it should continue to be done. This is an important issue to the LPC board.
Thank you. There's a motion. The chair will entertain a motion now, one way or the other.
Chair Canseco, I would make the motion that we direct staff to be able to update LPC licenses for PhD credentials with the equivalent to an upgrade fee of $54 and with a disclaimer on the processing time, 180 days, but even non-committal.
Do I hear a second?
Second that.
Any discussion? Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-4. All opposed, same sign. One opposed. The motion passes. Thank you.
We'll get to work on those rule changes and have those back. Should be at the next PA meeting.
Item 5. The duty to well, I'm going to let you take these.
Sure.
If these are long, we can do it the way we've done it before. Okay. Sorry, battery's gone. We could take 5, item 5, A and B, and pull anything that you think shouldn't go. The meeting will move a little faster. I can't remember how I did that last time. Is that what I did?
You just did like 5A. Any questions? If no questions, they would just vote to propose.
Okay. So let's do it that way. 5A is duty to update name and address and special licensing provisions for military spouses. Do you want to go through those for us, Gerald?
Sure. Let's see. 5. Well, I mean, are we going through them, or everybody's had a chance to read them? If there are no questions, I would just say let's just vote to propose.
Okay. Are there any questions with regard to item 5, A and B? John, I can't tell if you're waving or.
Sorry, move to propose.
Okay.
Well, that's 5A. If we're proposing is only 5A.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? Same sign. I think Chris abstained.
Dr. Taylor, are you abstaining?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I seconded. Did I not? Did I get my hand up there?
You're in favor of proposing the rule?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. 5B.
We'll need a motion to adopt 5B, the rule changes that have been proposed there.
So moved.
Second.
I will second.
All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? Same sign. Oh, look at that sweetie that joined us. Item 6 from the Texas State Board of Marriage and Family Therapists. I'll let you go through it, Daryl.
Dr. Scoma, did you want to lay them out, or do you want to just do like we've done now?
I'm prepared to do that, but I'm happy if you want to handle it that way. I've talked to Dr. Merchant and can answer some questions, but I think it's pretty self-evident if you want.
Yeah, I mean, unless there are questions, I would say let's just propose.
All those in favor, oh, we need a motion to propose.
Correct.
6A, right?
Correct.
6A, do we have a motion to propose?
So moved.
I'll make it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
And a second. Why don't we consider all Valerie and go in a second? All those in favor, signify by raising your hands. That's unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, friends.
6B. Now this is an adoption, right?
No rules under 6B.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, we're on 7A now.
7A, licensed specialist in school psychology.
I gotta figure out which ones here we're doing first. Hang on 2 seconds here.
7A.
We're doing the adopted first?
No, sir, the proposed. 460.
Proposed first. Okay, sorry, they're the other way in the packet here. So proposed 463.9. This essentially allows people who are licensed in other states to provide psychological services in a school setting, so long as they still meet coursework, examination requirements, and allows us to look at related disciplines in terms of what the degree is, rather than just psychology.
And that's because of the high need and the shortage. Okay.
Correct. And we've had instances where somebody coming from another state, like California, where they were good enough to get into California, but not necessarily not meeting the letter of ours. But we want to be able to let them practice in Texas.
We had no real concerns over the individual. It was a technical prohibition is what was keeping them out. So okay. This is meant to cure technicality type stuff, really.
So we have
so move proposal.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. The motion passes. Thank you. Where am I?
7B.
B.
Adopted.
Yep, adopted for post care based on a member's board's recommendation in an open meeting held after publication of the agenda, of this agenda in particular. Is that how
that's just legal gibberish.
Oh.
That gives us authority to send a rule back for reproposal if a member board changes something after this agenda has been posted.
I'm just going to say the number now.
Just say that, yeah.
From there.
Yeah.
7B.
463A.
Yeah. This is the LPA remediation rule, and I forget. Sorry, we're on move.
463.
Not proposing. Move adoption.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. I have a second.
Second. I'll second.
I think I'll do Dr. Cartwright. It's his turn. All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? Same sign.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. I don't want to make Asia turn on if she can't. Okay.
Eight. Nothing under 8A, but 8B.
8B.
Adoption of some LPC rules.
Okay, go ahead. You walk me through it.
Unless there are any explanations or objections.
I think it should be pointed out that we had non-substantive changes that came from the governor's office, but it did not.
Yes.
It did not affect the where we are in the process on these. It was approved. The non-substantive changes were they didn't even require a vote, so we're still at the same process or the same part of the process that we would have been out. Dr. Taylor, do you want to give any sort of insight on what this does and the motivations behind it?
No, I think we've covered that pretty well. That's in the packet, so I think we're ready to move forward, and I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, now I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Oh, here's Miss Rogers. Got her hand up.
Where is she? Yay, thank you.
We can't count. Miss Rogers, I'm assuming you were raising your hand to vote.
Not to speak.
Okay, now as long as she's on camera, she can vote. We just can't take an emoticon as a vote.
Too bad. That would have been fun. That was, now where are we? 9A.
9A, yes. Chair Brumley's out, but I won't lay them out. You guys have got the rules in your packet. Both of these have been vetted and sent up by the social work board. No concerns from staff on these changes.
And this is for adoption, correct?
For proposal.
For proposal.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions or concerns? And if not, I'll entertain a motion. This is to adopt, right?
To propose.
To propose.
Yeah.
John?
Sorry, I keep putting myself on mute. Move to propose.
Oh, that's all right.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? Same sign. And
that carried unanimously.
Yes, it carried.
Okay. Then nothing under adoption. That concludes the rules.
All right. So reports from member boards. Item 10, reporting from member boards regarding current or future issues that might affect the profession. Mr. Hallbauer.
Thank you, Chair Canseco. I wanted to mention that LPC board member Janie Stubblefield was appointed by you, Chair Canseco, to the new Children's Mental Health Subcommittee, and she is doing so as a representative of all of BHEC. Since we are at a BHEC level meeting today, I would say that this gets lots of thumbs up from me, from Dr. Taylor. Ms. Stubblefield is fantastic. She does a fantastic job on the LPC board. And she does have the educational background that'll really represent us well with her participation on this new subcommittee. They have already met. They're getting some formation issues in place, but she says it's going to be a great organization, or I mean, a great subcommittee. My apologies. I would just ask if it's appropriate, could we perhaps invite her to a future BHEC meeting to give an update, since she is the BHEC representative to that committee? If in your discretion, Chair Canseco, would that be acceptable?
Absolutely, I think it would be acceptable. And I remember reading through, it's been a while, so I can't remember the specifics, but her application really stood out. I think she's going to be a good fit for us. Thank you. She's going to do an excellent job. She is very thorough. And so, yeah, next time that we have next time that this group gets together, I'll reach out to her and let her know that come to us and give us an update on developments with that new subcommittee. Thank you.
If you'll just remind me prior to the next meeting, that way I can make sure I get it on the agenda.
Okay, will do.
Anybody else? Anything on the horizon? I was wondering about our overall progress since, well, when was the agency stood up, Daryl?
We were born September 1st, 2019, but we didn't actually assume control over anything until September 1st of 2020.
That's right.
Yeah. So we had a year where it was just me and writing rules and just doing everything you got to do to stand up the agency. And then we assumed regulatory control on September 1st of 2020.
I think even for us who are on the board, we sit here at quarterly meetings and we listen and we know that we're improving, but the drama, and I really think it is a dramatic change, isn't seen by everyone. I'm wondering if for the next meeting, maybe some members of your team could look at a couple of key accomplishments over time. I don't want to burden the staff too much, but I think seeing the big picture on a timeline, you know, the different improvements that you've made, particularly with the licenses that we were in the thousands, and a couple of other key points. It is the first agency to be stood up in Texas, and I think you told me 11 years. In 2019, I think it was 11 years. So a few more since then. I'd like to highlight our accomplishments. I'd love to see them on the website. If you think that's appropriate and if it's not costly. You know, I think that recognition is in order, and I think that BHEC is a model for other states. And I think that would be a good thing for the citizens to see, for our providers to see, you know, especially if they're struggling, you know, with a week's delay, it was really, you think a week's bad, it was really bad before, but maybe I think that would have an impact, not only our providers, but on consumers of the services our providers offer. Mental health is getting to be a bigger and bigger issue, as is behavioral health, and I think that we're doing a remarkable job.
Okay. We can put something
Are you
together.
okay with that?
Yeah, we can put something together. Tim and I can work on that.
Thank you, sir. And if there's nothing else, I think that we're ready to go to public comments, unless one of you, something's occurred to you while I spoke. Okay, we have 2 guests in the room and some folks on the phone. There's a 3-minute limit, and I will let Daryl and Patrick take over this section.
Yeah, Patrick will have the timer up on the screen up there. Okay. We'll let the folks here right here go.
Yes.
Stay right there. I'll change the camera. State your name, and you can begin.
Okay. You ready, Mr. Hyde? Perfect. So, good morning, board. I am Cody Taylor. I'm from the Beaumont area of Southeast Texas. Drove over a little 3.5, 4 hours to be here with you. I was here last week with the LPC. I really want to just kind of dive into why I'm here. I come to you today to address this board in person for the reasons of, right? What is the ultimate goal of this board? It should be to do everything possible to hold the persons who hold the state license to a higher standard. Would you agree? I think that's personal because I hold a certificate within my company that I am held to the standard of keeping compliance for health, safety, environmental. I'm coming to you today to narrate a grave injustice that's been performed by this council. Over 3 years ago, this council was brought 2 complaints with thousands of supporting documents of 2 LPCs that were qualified to be LPCs, that had a license of LPCs. However, they did not do service to my daughter and the case. I'm going to bring to you now that the only child custody evaluator that was actually appointed in our case, this is what was said. This apparent dual role by both counselors was evidently problematic. Both counselors performed no formal evaluation or assessment of the child. Mr. Taylor's, my concerns about the inappropriate application of clinical counseling methodologies were also largely justified. Both counselors left the role of an individual therapist and made the area of engaging the child in a dual relationship as an evaluator, and also offered opinions and recommendations to the court. Both therapists left the role of therapist and left the child behind when they started investigating. When asked of this evaluator, do you think that there could be psychological harm by the therapist engaging in this type of behavior? By definition, statutorily prohibited for those reasons. You don't engage in both therapy and forensic. You understand that the therapist made recommendations to the court. Absolutely. That's why it's statutorily prohibited. She exceeded her scope of her ethical duties. In your view, just to be clear, both the counselors violated their ethical roles. I thought so. They were never in a role permitted to investigate. That's a gross ethical violation. I bring this to you, and I know I have 35 seconds. If the council is going to hold these professionals, and this is going to have detrimental effects in the courts, both of these counselors brought to a grand jury. That means that there was probable cause of criminal activity and intent. Due to their actions, they have led me to open civil cause of action. And here's the reason why: fraud upon the court, and negligent misrepresentation of material facts with malicious intent. I have the evidence sitting in front of me. That's everything that I brought to this board along with others. The evidence shows that the LPCs tampered with the child's statements during sessions and then reported that into a court of law. House Bill 4062 was constructed with me and a representative. And the reason for that is we have no confidence in what's going on. Yes, sir, I'm wrapping up. Thank you, Mr. Hyde. We have no confidence in what these professionals are doing when it comes to our children. I am a citizen, I'm a civilian, I'm not licensed. But these individuals are taking upon them hands to play God in the court of law. I request this council reopen my complaint immediately, as I was never afforded the opportunity to discuss this with an investigator. And clearly the amount of evidence inside this case, they could not handle. They were not understanding of what they were looking at. Please understand that I'm not here because I want to be. I would much rather be doing anything else, playing golf, fishing, or just being at work, making money to supply and support my family. But 3 out of the last 4 years I've been taken from my child, not because I did something wrong other than being a father and challenging the situation, but for the moment of challenging, they've done everything against me. So I asked the board to please reopen what's going on. Otherwise, I have 5 years to file a complaint and continue to bring this to the board. I would like to hopefully have some comment to that. Or if there's any questions, I would open that to y'all, please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Okay, so should come on in public. I mean, okay. All right, so moving on to our virtual attendees. You got Kathy Ryder. Ms. Ryder, did you have public comments you want to give? Kathy, can you hear us? Yes. I'll come back to you later, Kathy, if you make it back to the computer. Mr. Gomez, did you have public comments you'd like to give? Mr. Gomez?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi. Yes, my name is Ruben Gomez. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in Texas, and I serve as the liaison to BHEC for the Texas Association of Counselor Educators and Supervisors. And first of all, I'd like to say TASIS appreciates the time and efforts of the BHEC board to progress and support the mental health profession and the needs of those that reside in Texas. I'd like to make public comment on the PhD designation on the licensure, and thank you for moving that actually forward. I would like to start with the PhD designation better protects and informs the public that the individual is educated and trained with a doctorate that is counseling specific, better informing the public when making their decision in choosing a provider. 882.31 of the Texas Administrative Code basically states that any training, experience, supervision, status, abilities of competencies, academic degrees, credentials must be accurate and not misleading or false. The PhD designation would fall within 882.31. 681.49 of the Texas Administrative Code states that the highest academic degree in counseling or in counseling related field from an accredited school may be used when advertising or announcing counseling treatment interventions to the public or in counseling related professional representation. So the counseling specific PhD designation would fall in line with 681.49 as well. Lastly, in order to be a counselor educator, a counselor must have a counseling specific PhD. Placing the designation on licensure will add a layer of acknowledgement and verification by the state when applying for the educator positions. I'd like to thank you for your time and continued commitment to the public and mental health professions of the state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Francis, did you have public comments you'd like to give?
Yes, this is Will Francis. I'm going to keep it brief. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to watch the meeting, to share earlier. I would just love to make a recommendation. I think it was very helpful when you all were discussing the issues there that you opened up for some public comment. And I would love to see this board invite more public comment into the process. I think it can be challenging for people to watch and see important discussions happen and feel that they have the ability to communicate and offer input into those discussions, not just associations, but others, and then have to wait until the very end of the meeting, sometimes after a vote has occurred, sometimes after many issues have been discussed, and it leaves 3 minutes to sort of have a challenging time wrapping it up. I would just love it if this board, similar to many other licensing boards across the country, could open up public comment more periodically throughout the meeting in spaces where people can contribute to discussions about rules before voting has occurred. I think it would definitely make it more inclusive. I think it would make it more transparent. I'm not by any means asking you to open up every issue, but I definitely think in spaces where there's votes on potential rules, the public can put their input in there. So thank you for the opportunity to share that.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Dr. Carr, did you have public comments you wanted to give?
Yes, sir. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is Joel Carr. I'm an LPC and an LCSW in the state of Texas, and I've been an LPC since roughly 98 and an LCSW since roughly 1999. And on both of my credentials on the wall, the PhD does appear behind my name. They did it much like Dr. Skoma said. You just called and asked when you got your degree back in the day. And my first PhD applied to social work, and my second PhD applied to counseling, but it's not in counseling, it's in educational psychology. And under the current rules, that particular degree is not deemed counseling specific, but under the rules when I got that degree, it was acceptable. So if this rule changes, how does that affect those of us who have had these degrees for years and fell under different board rules from days gone by and things of that nature? Just kind of curious. Thanks much for allowing me to speak, and hope y'all have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Sarter, do you have public comments you want to give?
Yes, I do. My name is Dr. Terry Ann Sarter, and I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor, counselor educator, and liaison to the BHEC for the Texas Counseling Association. I am also grateful for the opportunity to serve on the BHEC Rules and Standardization Committee. TCA appreciates the council for allowing stakeholders to make public comment and express both concern and appreciation for the council and their individual member boards. TCA appreciates the efforts taken by BHEC, the executive directors, licensing board members, and the staff to highlight issues and laws that may impact the rulemaking processes and our roles as we continue to support the mental health needs of Texans. Additionally, it was great to hear about the continuous improvements and efficiency of licensing and enforcement operations. While we were hopeful going into the legislative session that the compact would pass, it did not. TCA appreciates the work that BHEC, the boards, and their support for all their continued efforts to ensuring individuals have access to mental health professionals. The conversation surrounding 882.23 earlier in the meeting was helpful. Thank you for allowing the various member organizations to provide comments in this discussion. Counseling does occur where the client is, and should the counselor in another state travel to Texas, short term, they should be able to continue to provide care to the current clients in their state where they hold their license. Now, should they decide to provide services to Texas clients, that's a different story. Due to the non-passing of the counseling compact for LPCs, Patrick Hyde's comments and or recommendation in the last LPC board meeting on August 11th about the possibility of the Model Act language pertaining to coursework to streamline the process for license holders in other states would be helpful. This type of model and or language would also work well should other member boards experience the same difficulties later. TCA does support the designation or the decision for BHEC and the board in acknowledging professional counselors who have earned a doctoral degree in counseling by including it on their license. As noted earlier in this meeting, this was done in the past, and my license does hold that, and it does say that as well. Individuals who pursue this degree dedicate a great deal of time, energy, and effort, which can enhance their development as a professional counselor and further inform evidence-based practices in the profession, including the specification indicates achievement of a doctoral degree on their professional license also allows for consistency with 681.49D and 882.31. This is just as Mr. Gomez said earlier, so I'm not going to repeat those specific pieces. I also want to echo Will Francis's comments regarding allowing for public comment within those pieces. I know I am out of time. I do want to thank y'all for your diligence and your hard work and efforts, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak today.
Dr. Sartor, if I can ask you a brief question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
What was that you were about to say?
On which part?
The last part.
I am not quite sure on that one.
Okay,
but
just cut out a little bit. Thank you so much.
Oh, I saw Patrick's hands go up, and I was just like, let me just cut this off. Okay, but I appreciate y'all's work and efforts, and thank y'all so much for all the time and dedication y'all put into this work. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
And if there's nothing else, you're gonna try question. Okay.
Mr. Crum, do you have public comments you want to give?
Yes, sir. This is Philip with the Association for Mental Health Professionals.org again. I want to disagree with an earlier statement. The purpose of the council is to hold each other accountable. And if that requires some microanalysis of another board's work, then you better get on with it. First, I don't really care one way or the other if the licensee's license is updated or not. The license, frankly, I think it's an ego thing. The license is not prevented from marketing themselves as a PhD. And from my point of view, the discussion was very lively, and I appreciate that. That accountability seemed to be apparent, but despite numerous solid logic reasons that were given why this decision didn't need to happen, starting from Daryl Spinks on down, the vote devolved into a you approve mine and I'll approve yours action. Kudos to John B. for not caving in on the vote and having the courage to stand up and say, I don't think this is necessary. That is what we need more of. And that's all I've got to say about that. I appreciate the meeting today.
Thank you.
Kathy, if you're out there and you have something to say, speak now, forever hold your peace. 1, 2, 3, too late. All right, that's it, Madam Chair, and there are no callers.
Thanks so much to all of you for attending, both the people who are watching us from their Zoom or Teams meetings and those of us here present. I sure appreciate all of you on the board, and it is, where is this time again?
Upper right, 12:48.
Can't see worth a damn. 12:40, right?
12:48.
12:48 on August 15th. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank y'all. Good to see everybody.